Joining me now from Budapest is Diana Urge-Vorsatz. She's Vice Chairman of the UN's Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change. In Oxford, England for us is Karsten Haustein, a researcher at Oxford University School of Geography and the Environment. To both of you, thank you for joining us on the Newsmakers. Diana, how is it possible that we still haven't managed to persuade most of the world how serious this problem is?
Well, I think we have. Just mentioning the fact that there have never in world history been 140 heads of states under one roof, except in Paris when they agreed on the Paris Agreement on climate change. But the problem is that we haven't realized that the actions we need to take are need to be much more aggressive than what we have agreed to just a few years ago.
So how have we not managed to persuade people that we need to be more aggressive? Look, everybody knows now, I think it's pretty much accepted, is it not, that within 12 years, Karsten's going to speak to us more about this, in about 12 years' time, what we call extreme weather is going to become normal weather.
The issue is that so far we have been thinking about incremental changes to energy and our economies. Right now we see that we need a fundamental change in how we go about our energy system, how we go about solving our economic challenges. So that's much more drastic and much more fundamental than we used to think about. And this is much more difficult to accept. And also there is a generational gap. Often the decision makers are those whose lives won't be that much affected, whereas the young generation is only just starting to wake up that they really have to influence today's leadership, that they need to take much more bold action.
Okay, Karsten, tell us about extreme weather and how it relates to climate change. Over the past 12 months, just the past 12 months, we have reported, every news organization in the world reporting on drastic things happening in all corners of the globe.
Yeah, so the difficulty for us is to really point out and find the evidence for all the events that we see in every given year. And we can just look back at what happened in 2018 with hurricanes and flooding. And is it partly caused by humans? So the question we try to address is, has it become a more likely scenario for such events to occur? So to actually get this message across to the people is not that simple. So what we try instead to really put a number to each and any of those events, and turns out for heat waves it's fairly easy to say yes, it is much more likely now than it used to be 100 years ago. For floods, we cannot always say with any degree of certainty that this is the case. And with droughts and fires, it's sometimes even worse. Yet, I think what people need to realize, that even if they are not impacted, and even if we can't always establish the evidence, that other people are definitely impacted. And especially if it comes to heat waves, we have to understand that there are regions on this planet where a tiny increase in temperature is already a very risky situation for the people there. And just because we enjoy a nice summer in the UK doesn't mean that other people wouldn't suffer a great deal. And I guess this message needs to be put out there more often.
Karsten, you're speaking to us from Oxford. You work at Oxford University. I'm going to give you an exam question. Have you ever heard of pirocumulonimbus clouds?
Yes, of course.
This is incredible, right? So when I present this program, I have to research the topics because I'm speaking to experts like you. So let's inform the viewer of the little bit of research I did on this. Pirocumulus nimbus clouds are a little-known phenomenon. They come with intense wildfires, which people believe are more and more intense as climate change affects the world. These clouds are so dense and so dramatic that their lightning can create even further forest fires. Surely something like this, to a layman like me, I look at something like this and think, well, if this is a new phenomenon, it must be related to climate change. Is it?
Well, this is, I guess, exactly a problem that we face on a daily basis. While these observations certainly exist, so people do have the impression that They see things, they experience things they haven't seen before, as you just pointed out. It's hard to, do solid science based on these, as we call it, sketchy pieces of evidence. So what we want to do instead is to really look at the science, make sure that these personal impressions are actually based on objective data. So do we really see those clouds more often? And this is then when we can actually say something about the risk and the increased risk to that point and the increased risk we are going to be faced with in the future. And I think this is where such observations can be a harbinger for what's to come, but not always.
Yes, and that's where we need experts like you to tell people like me what's going on. Deanna, you would have been in Incheon in South Korea not that long ago, a few months ago, the IPCC. It said that at the moment, we're not heading to hit the targets we need to in terms of limiting the temperature increases around the world, and that actually, if we go the way we're going now, we're pretty much heading for disaster. How much more clear can the IPCC make this issue to people, and at what stage are we going to see the actions that the IPCC would like to see?
Well, the IPCC itself does not recommend any actions. What we are trying to do, we are a scientific body, and what we are trying to do, we are just putting out the science and synthesizing the kind of data and information that we have just heard, and translating it to governments, what this means, what kind of actions can they take, and what will be the consequences of their different actions. So at the end of the day, we are leaving the decisions with governments, with the key decision makers. Nevertheless, your question is still very valid, because the IPCC is quite clear about the fact that unless we seriously change the courses of action, we are going to see much more of the problems that we have been talking about and that the viewer has seen in the last couple of weeks. We have seen 100 degrees centigrade differences in the planet in terms of extreme temperatures in north and south and so on. What I worry about is a little bit about the previous discussion, that by the time we have all the data and all the evidence that my colleague has discussed, then it might be too late. So as you mentioned, we really need to be bold and take action now.
Okay, so you know what? You may be restricted, Deanna, from your position at the IPCC in saying what people really want to hear, because it seems as if there may need to be a more forceful effort by governments to make people act in a way that will help save our planet. Because obviously it's an individual choice, but individuals, we have a love of our lifestyle. We don't want to give it up. Right? So maybe we need to be told. And there's another issue here. Let's just show a tweet from Donald Trump. There was a recent massively cold spell around the Midwest of the United States, and Donald Trump, probably a climate change denier. He wouldn't say it, but the way he talks about clean coal, as if that even exists, people accuse him of being a climate change denier, and he says in the beautiful Midwest, wind chill temperatures are reaching minus 60 degrees, the coldest ever. Where is global warming gone? Bring global warming back. And then there was a clip on his favorite TV channel on Fox News where they're politicizing climate change. So here's this very short clip of how some, and they seem to be on the right wing, regard climate change as a left-wing issue. Let's play that clip.
We know it's cold outside. Now the left is actually using new terms for global warming, like extreme weather. Why do they keep changing the language? Are they just pushing the same old agenda with new words?
Okay, Deanna, I can't put that question to you because of your position at the IPCC. I respect that. Karsten, what do you say to people who claim that climate change is a left-wing conspiracy? How do you fight against that?
Well, yeah, this is a good question. Actually, for us, it's kind of funny with like what new crazy ideas they, like crackpot ideas that we call it, come up with. And so I have been debating people, or start debating people probably 10 years ago, and I thought, you know, some of them perhaps are rational enough to realize, okay, they just ventured down the wrong path. Turns out that, yeah, like social sciences can tell us quite a bit about how people actually behave. So it's literally like inbuilt in us. Not only that we are really bad at reacting to dangers that are far ahead in the future, but also how we then deal with that kind of information. And some people who just, have to question their whole life and certainly their lifestyles, they react with complete denial. And I guess this is what we have to realize. So discussions don't really work. It's ideologically driven, and we have to address that point, because as much as we are sometimes not quite sure about whether a certain extreme event has become more likely or not, that's not the big point. The science is clear. We know it's us. We know it's bad. We know it needs to be tackled. And so that message is clearly out, and now it's on us to really debate with the people who are interested to solve the matter. The IPCC is there to provide all the sort of framework that we work in, but we as scientists and citizens need to speak out, and certainly anyone else needs to engage. And we have to stop balancing somehow crackpot ideas with the science. So we clearly have to point out what Trump's saying is rubbish, Fox News is rubbish, and this is nothing we even need to discuss anymore. Let's focus on the positives, let's focus on the future.
Of course, Diana.
Yes, I actually argue that it is becoming much less and less politicized. Perhaps, yes, there are still some extremes. On the other hand, what we see also in the United States is that the vast majority of the economy is going down the path of actually reducing its emissions. Most of the years, actually, even the US emissions have been going down, except for last year when it started going up again. Also last year and the year before, the vast majority of energy-related investments were in renewable energy and not into coal, not into oil, not into natural gas. So what we see is that the industry, whether it's left or right or middle or whatever, it is going down this route. And this is what is important to see. And this, even the IPCC acknowledged, even in its report that you just referred to, it used even the word, this has dramatically improved. The conditions for renewable energy and other mitigation technology have dramatically improved, and this transformation has started.
Okay, you had talked about the economy when we started this discussion,
Diana. I absolutely agree.
Okay, listen, this point I think is important, because who are going to be the great saviors of the planet? And Diana had talked about the economic impact of climate change and how countries are struggling to compromise their economies when they work towards mitigating climate change. You'll know the sovereign wealth funds that control $3 trillion worth of assets. There were a COP24 in Poland. They demanded that governments take some action against climate change. For the past few weeks, possibly a couple of months, on Friday, students around the world have been coming out of their classrooms and marching in their hometowns to demonstrate, to force action to be taken against climate change. And yet, at the moment, still not enough is being done. So we come back to the original point every time there's ever a discussion about climate change, is what's going to force people to take action. Diana, can you give us some examples around the world of projects that you think are good sort of touchstones to emulate?
Absolutely. For example, we are just working on an Energy Plus district in Vienna, which produces actually more energy than it uses in a whole district. This is not totally science fiction anymore. We already have many buildings around the world which actually produce more energy than they consume. In fact, as many of the viewers can think, this is the luxury of the rich. But in fact, even in Hungary, there are companies who are producing and selling buildings, net Energy Plus buildings for average Hungarian families in the countryside, really not the rich market. The same way we have mentioned how more and more energy is being produced by renewable forms of energy, even for the poor in Africa, India, and so on, providing actually energy access, so allowing them to be able to switch on the light and turn on their mobile phones to get access to information and so on. So this is really spreading. What we need more is also we need to rethink agriculture, since emissions are also very important from this sector, and we haven't reached a lot of change in that. Also, what is really worrying is the enormous increase in flying from around the world. Just the amount of airports, for example, China will build in the next couple of years, will probably compensate all their other efforts of really being able to crack on coal-related power emissions.
Okay. We're out of time. this issue, this discussion will go on for years and years. Thank you very much to both of you. Really appreciate your coming on to the Newsmakers.
Thank you.